What's up everyone, Lance Hedrick here, and today we're taking a look at the newly released Breville Oracle Dual Boiler. In Australia and most parts of the world, this is a company referred to as Breville. They don't have the rights to the name Breville in Europe, so Sage we have since we're located in Europe. But anyway, this is one of their newest additions to their lineup and something that we're going to do a deep dive in today's video. So feel free to use the time cues below because we're going to get all up in this bad boy. Oh, isn't that just like a nice appliance at home? There's a little fan inside, which I guess we won't really talk about much later, but it's to help cool down some of the electronics and whatnot inside the machine, which I think is actually a pretty decent touch, though that is one more part to take into account with longevity. But what I'm really wanting to get to in this review is what they are bringing to the table with this machine that makes it so different from everything else, and that gets me excited for the future of kind of these assisted machines that are not fully manual, but ones that help you dial in the coffee at home. This is not a cheap machine. This machine in the US costs $3,000. So who the heck is this market? Well, I think it's clear it's people who have that type of money to spend, first of all. It's people who love coffee but don't necessarily want to get like a Jura or something along those lines that are super automatic and usually lack in quality, and they want to have that fresh experience of freshly ground beans, having it all here without the trouble of needing to dial in or whatever it might be. It could also be for households where maybe one person's really into coffee, the other person enjoys coffee but doesn't want to get into the faff of learning how to make it, and so you have something that can really aid you in all of the steps. Let's take a look at what makes this different from all their other SKUs, including the Oracle Touch, which is also a dual boiler Oracle machine. Now this is me from about 15 minutes from now, and I'm drinking a wonky espresso that I did something weird for that you'll see here later in the video, so make sure you get there. But I'm going to take this moment to say, if you haven't liked and subscribed, that always helps me a ton. Over 60% of you that watch are not subscribed, so boost some numbers and get them rookie numbers up, as Leo or I guess Matthew McConaughey would say. But anyway, I appreciate you watching this far. You are legends. Thanks very much. Let's continue on. There are lots of machines coming out now that are really high tech with a grinder built in, but they're more so geared towards gearheads, people that really want to get granular and really intense with their coffee. And with those machines, I don't really understand a built-in grinder because those are for people who want to get in with flow rate and pressure profiling and all of the different nerdy aspects of coffee that aren't really needing the aid of a built-in grinder. People who want that type of control tend to have a standalone grinder that's better than what any built-in grinder could be. With this machine, it makes a lot of sense because the people who want that automated experience likely don't have a grinder, and one built in with the technology this is touting, it makes sense. So with that new M2 burr from Barista, sourced out of Etzinger and Liechtenstein, this is a solid grinder just like a Barista Encore ESP Pro. Within this chamber here, once you lock in the portafilter right here, it will grind directly into it and tamp it for you. On the other side, we have their auto milk technology, which will automatically steam the milk for you, and it has a temperature sensor and will tell you what the temperature of the milk is. So even if you're going in manual mode, which is pulled out, you'll be able to see what your temperature for your ideal cup of coffee. We see a sleeker type of setup. There's no adjustments for the grind wheel on the side. There's nothing on this side for milk or anything like that. We just have a big old 5.7-inch display with a quad-core processor on the inside, their most powerful to date. And the screen itself, we no longer have that laggy kind of stuff, just really smooth movements. You're doing it all through this screen. So that right off the bat is going to turn a lot of people off, understandably, but again, this is for people who are wanting that automated process. The only real physical button you have is the power on and off button, which even that you don't need. They now have an app that you can download, which will allow you to turn on and off your machine from the comfort of your bed when you wake up. So I have it on right now, but boom, I can turn it off with the touch of my phone, and there it is. It's back off. But I can turn it back on when I wake up in my bed, bada bing, bada boom, and look, it's back on with that lovely little jingle. You have different options. You can rename appliance. My appliance is called Soup Kitchen. You can do screen color theme, dark or light. So we have it on dark right now, but we can switch it to light. Bada bing, bada boom, there it goes. You can also mess with the screen brightness. It comes at 50%. I'm gonna put it at 100. Boom, much brighter, which is better for this. Sound for the little jingle bells. You can change it. You can also come over to settings and you have the theme again, which we have, it's showing dark, but We'll click, oh, the theme of the actual app. Sorry about that. Temperature unit, it's in Fahrenheit. I want it in Celsius. Measurement, imperial. I want it metric. Stream video over Wi-Fi only. And then they have tons of tutorials on here, which is really helpful for people that want to study up on their phone or whatever it might be. Though, that being said, you don't need that. You can always just physically hit that button, the one physical kind of integration on the machine when it comes to the interface itself. When you begin the machine, it walks you through a plethora of steps, which is very intuitive. I did the full walkthrough with people on my Patreon just to kind of show them what that looks like, how to set up your water filter, which this does come with a water filter, comes with cleaning supplies, comes with your standard split portafilter. This is one I've added to it, so this is not with it. I just wanted a bottomless portafilter for the video because I'm going to show some things. But it comes with a split shot portafilter, as well as a single basket and a double basket and a few other things. But what we're going to start with is just this auto dial-in process. I have some beans in here. This is actually, because I was throwing different things in, a really light roast, a medium roast, a dark roast. This one's 100% Arabica Nicaraguan coffee. This is not necessarily something I would drink, but I was just throwing in different things to see how it would respond to it. What we're going to do is you can either hit this in order to start grinding, hit the portafilter, or we can just push this to the side for a nice little tactile feel. It starts the burrs. It releases beans into the burrs. Grinding. And there we have it. So that's the auto tamp spinning around. So these little fins that kind of level the coffee and give it pressure as it's going down. Now, that is awesome, and it can do a really nice job, but it can also not do a really nice job if it overestimates the amount of coffee that's needed in here. It can leave little fin prints on there. Now, something I have noticed is whenever it's overdosed just a little bit, the way that these fins are working is almost like a nutating tamp. So I'm going to show you what nutating is. So it's doing this right here. I'm not even doing much pressure. In fact, I can do it like this to show you I'm not putting much pressure. But I'm nutating it, and it is further compacting this puck, okay? Now, the reason I'm doing this is to show you what can happen when you over-nutate. Grounds coming through the holes on the bottom. Look at this. Once espresso starts to flow, all of those are going in your cup of coffee. You can have a very grainy kind of cup with a lot of grounds in there, which is not a good time. Now, because this isn't doing it based off of weight, it's doing it based off of volume, it needs a little bit of time to kind of situate. And it's actually quite accurate after you give it a couple of times of understanding how much coffee to release, which is really important. Years ago, Breville patented this, which is called the razor. I'm a big believer in dosing by volume, and Breville's been ahead of the game on that for a long time. And this is why they, say you can make coffee without a scale, and I tend to agree with that. In fact, I don't think you really need a scale when you're creating your coffee puck. It's nice to have your output because then you can understand, your ratios for repeatability. But if you have a set amount of volume going through, you can really do away with scales when you're dosing really well by volume. A lot of people, and even coffee professionals I've seen review these machines, have no idea what this really does. Now, what the razor does is it helps you understand how much to dose into your basket. So if you don't have an auto dosing machine, you can figure it out based off of dosing, tamping, and then using this. What this does when you put it in is it will go in and then you twist it. And if it undoes any of the grounds on top, you have just a little bit too much coffee. So in this one, it seems that there's just a little bit too much coffee as we've unsettled some right there on the top. Granted, it's not a ton, but there is a little bit that we've unsettled. What this allows, because it sits on the edges of the portafilter, consistent depth dosing. As we see here, if we go and start the extraction, water trickles out. Now, if we were to grab that and measure it, it's coming out at like 5 or 6 milliliters a second. Now, what we have here is a space, a cavity above that puck that's about 1 centimeter tall. And then there's also going to be a bit of a cavity where that shower screen meets down on top of it. So if we were to measure the amount of water it takes to fill that cavity, and then divide it by the amount of water that comes out per second, there's a few seconds where it takes to fill that cavity before it begins to saturate the puck. Now, water on top of this puck does saturate some of it, but because it's finely ground and tamped tightly, it's not going to penetrate very far at all. Not until that full cavity, that full space is filled with water, can pressure begin to be exerted. You need resistance in order to enact pressure. So for there to be resistance, all the empty space must be filled. That's why headspace is such a big deal. If you have this much coffee in here and this much headspace, it'll take 2 to 3 times as long to saturate it, which means that top tightly packed ground area is going to be hitting a lot of water before the rest of the puck, very uneven extraction, and a very imbalanced cup. With pump-driven machines, especially ones that have lower flow rates, it is very important to have as minimal headspace as possible for the tastiest and most balanced espresso. Regardless of the size of your basket, the amount of coffee you want in there is going to be the same. You want it to be all the way up here for optimal texture, really. It takes a lot of coffee with some baskets. And so if you want to have smaller doses without killing your headspace, well, bada bing, bada boom, a smaller diameter basket comes in to save you, and you can get the same bed depth without as much coffee. Now, of course, if you have a lever style machine or something where water floods the cavity immediately, like for instance on a Flare 58, right when you raise the lever, all the water is on top of the puck, headspace doesn't matter nearly as much, and you don't need to dose by volume. When you have a pump driven machine, it is, I think, of critical importance in order to get you the most consistent and best tasting shots. So, with all that being said, we can go ahead and toss this in there and allow it to pull a shot of espresso. Now it's on the full dose. This is going to be a big, big, big shot, but we're going to go with it. So it's going through pre-infusion, and boom, it just kicked on to full pressure. So there is a built-in pre-infusion where it's their patented lower or dimmed, I guess, pump power. So it'll do about 3 or so bar of pressure, which is just really a lower water debit, not letting the pressure rise too much, and then it'll kick to the full water debit of the pump. Now this pulled in 19 seconds. I mean, that who knows really what that is. This is don't judge the machine by this first change in what it does. And the reason I say that is because we sat there, we scraped it, we nutated it, we let it sit out for a while. That changes a lot of the back pressure. When you're making espresso, you want it tamped and immediately start to pull. You don't want it to aerate. You don't want it to sit there, and you don't want to mess with it. So anyway, went ahead. It automatically changed its grind size to 24. So again, there's no wheel on the side, no messing around with a wheel. There are 45 settings that you can control right here. But it will automatically dial in for you based off of kind of conventional espresso ratios. So what it's trying to hit is around 25 seconds, give or minus like 2 or 3. So it's going to try to get you into that area. So because that pulled in 19 seconds for the amount of water it released, it decided, oh, we need to go 1 tick finer. So now what we can do, we take out that puck, tap it out, give it a little wipey poo, then we go back in for round 2. There we go. Spinning, spinning, spinning. Now, initially, when I got this machine, I thought what it was doing right after, I thought it was like auto purging. And I guess it could be doing that. If it is, it's not super good at doing it. But anyway, there we have our second one right here, which is still quite coarse. And again, I think that's because it's doing a little clever nutation going on. Now, this one didn't get any, not a ton, but a couple that kind of came through. And it seems like it didn't quite tamp all the way super well. But man, that is some coarse grounds. Now, you can get away with that if you're nutating with coarser grounds because it's giving it more compaction when you nutate, okay? So you're able to go a bit coarser, which I actually think is probably a good thing. So anyway, let's go ahead and start this shot and see how much time it takes. So this one, it's trying to hit 25 seconds for the full amount, give or minus 2 or 3 seconds. This one's going a bit faster. As I said, I nutated that last one extra, so we can't really go based off what that one was. So this is it's automatically changing it. Look at that. It's based off of a motor, and you don't even hear it. It's very silent. Now, like I said, one of the issues with this is it's not purging after each shot. You can purge it yourself, just like this. I'll show you how to purge it, which I do recommend doing. You double click, and it will purge out. Purges out, 7-ish grams, 7 or so grams. So not a ton of purge, also not a trivial amount. That's 7 grams you're wasting of your coffee. But it purges it out to help reset the new grind size. So I do recommend doing that. In the first dial-in, when you just turn on the machine, it doesn't give you really the option to sit there and purge it out. You just have to kind of deal with it. So anyway, we've purged it out. Now we're going to 21, and we're going to see how that pulls. All right, so it is done doing that. Let's go ahead and open it out. And there we have it. So it went quite a bit finer, and you can actually see how much finer it went visually. We don't have nearly as many of those big boulders. So let's check on the bottom. And this is something I would actually probably recommend doing, is just wiping the bottom of the, well, I guess if you have the split shot, you really can't. But this is going to be like little grounds that are going to get in your coffee due to that nutation. So anyway, I remember once I was talking to Matt Perger, who really brought nutation to the world spotlight, and he sent me a photo where if you nutate long enough, you can make little noodles of grounds come out the bottom, because they're getting compacted through those holes, and they'll stick together because they've been pushed and squeezed so much, kind of like, I guess, like a sausage or something. Let's go ahead and do this one. There we go. We got our first few drips at about 5 seconds. Still pulling super quickly. So as you can see though, while it's not amazingly quick at dialing you in, it is continuously going finer and finer on your behalf. Now, could it be better? Of course it could. But that's something that I think is a really cool feature, that it is able to read the flow rate, read how fast it came out, read the time that it took, and it's automatically changing it. You can turn that auto dial-in setting off if you're someone that wants to play around with your coffee, or if you want to make soup. But in this situation, for people that, you know, want to mess around with that, you have the capability. Now, the coffee did run out, so I will give it a pass on making it, this last one is being so fast. When you have barely any coffee left in there versus a hopper pushing beans down, the grinds do get coarser. And any barista that's ever worked a bar shift out there will know this. Whenever the hopper gets low, the shots tend to become faster. This came out about 53 grams out. So it looks like they're doing roughly a 1 to 2 in 25 seconds. 23 to 25 grams, maybe 22 grams, depending on the coffee you're using and the basket you're using. If you're using theirs, around 22 to 24 grams. And then they're pulling out, you know, around 50. Now, of course, that number's going to change as well, because it's a set amount of water that's coming out. They're doing it like volumetrically. So what that means is if you have 22 grams of coffee, then you're going to have more liquid come out because less will be absorbed by the puck. If you have 26 grams of coffee in there, then less will come out, right? So you're also going to deal with this type of ratio situation where it's not taking into account the amount of coffee and changing the volume that's coming out. It's going to give you a set amount of water every time, regardless. There we go. What we can do is test essentially how much water is coming out. This isn't going to be exact because there's no pressure, but this should give you a rough idea of how much water is being put through that puck. All right, so roughly it's giving us about 70 grams of water, 65 to 70, maybe 75, which makes sense if you take about, 15 grams of that as staying in the puck. So that's roughly what it's doing whenever you're doing the double shot. Now, of course, we can come in here and we can make it custom, and we can change the size of the drink we're wanting, right? We can get really big like this. We can do this one. All right, so with Lungo, we're getting out 126 grams, which is essentially almost double what that double shot was. If you don't want to mess around with that automatic menu, the auto mode kind of stuff, you can always do a little bit like that right there. So this is the manual mode. As you can see, there's a nice digital pressure gauge. It has the temperature displayed right there, grind size, temperature of the milk, foam level of the milk, actuator for the steam wand, then we have hot water, and then the actual brew actuation. So some different options you can do here. Obviously, you can change the grind size, the temperature of the milk, and the foam level, but you can also hold down the brew actuator. You can change the brew temp down from 86 up to about 96, not about, to 96. So we'll set it at 90, whatever. Then you can do manual, or you can do single or double shot size. Get out of that. You can hold down the hot water button, and in 25 milliliter increments, you can change the amount of hot water that will come out of the spigot, like this right here. Whee! And it'll stop at whatever you set it at, or you can manually stop it just like that. Boom. And then, of course, like I said, you can hit the steam wand, and it'll start steaming for you. But as you see, the temperature shows live right there. So if you're manually steaming it, you can go to 60 degrees or whatever it is that you might want for your milk. Then we just swipe back down to get back to this mode right here. So this is not the stock basket. This is a bit bigger, and it's because I kind of want to show you, this is the stock basket. I kind of want to show you the how quickly this can actually change the amount of coffee it's dispensing based off of the sensing that's going on inside. It's actually pretty impressive. So we put a smaller basket in, so it's used to filling up a lot more. This is quite a bit smaller. In fact, let me go ahead and show you exactly. Like, look at that. That's a big old honking basket. That one's a little baby basket, okay? So We're gonna put this one in, and we're just gonna let it grind up for us. And it's gonna take the previously set grind setting. It doesn't know we've changed coffees, so it's gonna work with what it's got. I can't remember if I redialed or re-tiered the scale, but it's okay. All right, that is done. Let's see how much this actually gave us. We're gonna just break the seal on the edge. About 22-ish grams, 21.6 grams. All right, so that's what this basket gave us on the first try. We're gonna put this one in and see what it gives us on the first try, because it's trying to go based off of that depth. Put this in. Now, of course, on those fins on the bottom, you can always change the depth at which they're gonna go, but I would recommend keeping it at the standard depth. That's where, it's the perfect amount of headspace. So here we go. Let's see what it did first try. It's fully leveled there. 29 grams. This is a big old basket, my friends, and it went all the way up to 29 grams. It's able to detect between the two baskets. So just one more time. $22.6 grams. Let's go ahead and put this big boy in. This is way a ton of coffee, but this is, I'm just curious where they're both gonna pull, and then we'll dial in based off the one that's closer. Boop. All right, so first attempt at the previous grind size for the other coffee, and we got drops at that 6 second. That was during the pre-infusion, so that should be about perfect. Let's see. $22 seconds. All right, so on the first one, it pulled out 27 grams of espresso, likely because we're doing a double shot with 30 grams of coffee. So that's why it went pretty quick, is it ran out of water. Now, with that much coffee, you'd probably need to go up closer to a lungo. But anyway, let's put in this other basket just to see what it pulls at. This will show you, though, the difference in varying doses and the amount of yield you're going to get with a constant debit, or a constant amount of water it'll come out. The flow rate's faster, but it may take about the same amount of time, maybe even a little longer, because more water is going to get through it. There was less to absorb in the puck. And look at that, 29 seconds, and the yield is 40. There was probably 1.5 grams per gram of coffee absorbed, with about a 6 gram disparity. So something like 9 or 10 grams of water was left out. And so, yeah, we're at about 12 grams more of espresso in this one. There's also going to be inconsistency from shot to shot. You're not going to be able to get the same amount of coffee in the portafilter and get the same output 5 times in a row. There's going to be some variation. Even on a gravimetric machine, there's likely a little bit more of a variation using this volumetrics, because it's relying on a flow meter. But in any event, you see what's going on there. That's actually dialed in pretty well to do some milk steaming. So let's go ahead and steam up some milk. So on this, we can choose under the milk. We have the capability of choosing which type of milk it is. Today I have oat milk, which is the Barista edition, and I've got whole milk. So what we're going to do is on this first one, we'll do the dairy. Okay, that's fine. Temperature, I don't want it that hot. Maybe, let's do 57. Microfoam, let's go level 6 and see what that does. We're going to go ahead and start this. Now, because this is a dual boiler, you're able to grind and steam at the same time, unlike the Oracle Jet. Now, the Oracle Jet has thermojets in it, which means it's instantaneous, but the amount of wattage it draws whenever it's heating up is so much so that you can't do both at the same time. So you have to pull your shot and then steam your milk. In this, with the dual boiler system, there's a boiler right above the group head. There's a heating element right at the group head, so you can get extra temperature stability. And then you have a boiler for the steam. Put that right there. Then we're gonna hit bang and bang, same time. Espresso's running a little faster this time. It's fine. I'm gonna go and just stop it early. That's why you should purge out the grinder whenever any change is made. Make sure that you have a set depth on your puck, which may not have been set because I switched from a 30 gram dose to a 22, like bing bang bong. But here we go. I do have another pitcher. I like to transfer pitchers when pouring some lart. Just because I also don't like the Breville pitchers for pouring from. The spouts aren't optimized. They do have like a pro pitcher now you can buy as an option, but I just wish they would fix the spout on their normal pitcher and life would be good. And then when you put it back down, you ready? Bada bing, bada boom. Auto purge. Now, I've not done anything to this milk at all. I'm just transferring the pitcher. I have not poured in so long, it's going to be wild. Let's see how this works. All right, not terrible. I was a little nervous because it's been probably months at this point since I've poured. Not too bad. Incredible milk texture, though. All right, then we can do the texture test. Perfect. So now let's try out the oat. Big tip, always shake intensely your oat milk. All right, if you want to purge, you just double click. Like I showed, you can always double click an icon and it'll purge it out. So there's a little quick purge. You can purge out the steam wand if you want. A little quick purge. We could also purge out the grinder as I showed earlier with a double click. I really like that feature. We're gonna go and switch over our milk from dairy to oat. We're gonna take temperature, 60's fine, whatever. Microfoam, let's do 6 again and see how that works. And then it's gonna be grinding. We'll go and get our milk situated. In fact, if we want, we can go ahead and start it. We'll go and start it. It takes longer to do that than to pull the shot. Boom. Got that. Lock this into place. Now, when it comes to grinding, you do have the option of doing it based off time as opposed to off of the volume. I don't recommend doing that. I think volume dosing is the best way. And if you want to do it off whatever, like, you can, but it only comes in 1 second increments, which I think is a bit of a miss. It should come in tenths of seconds, but again, that shot ran a little fast. I should probably just redial it in, but I'm not letting it go through the whole thing in order for the machine to know. If you stop it early, the machine won't tell you what to do, right? So as you see, the milk steaming still took longer because the shot was a bit fast, but there we go. We lift out this steam wand, and let's test how it does switching over to oat. Again, not touching it. I'm gonna pour it. All right, this isn't looking as silky as the milk was, but we're gonna go for it regardless. That's not bad. And there you have it. Not as silky as I think I could get manually, but still quite nice, especially for oat milk. So it does do a solid job. I'm not quite sure what exactly they're doing with the steam integration that is different when it comes from oat to dairy and what led them to the decisions that they made in order to make there be a difference. But regardless, it's pretty good. Again, not as I think you can get even silkier milk, especially with this Barista Edition Oatly, but it does a solid job. It's going to do a bang-up job for you. So if you're wanting that auto milk system, well, there you go. And I guess if we can do the texture test. Good to go there. You ain't spilling that for days, baby. There's a water reservoir right in the back that looks like this. It comes out so that you can bing, bang, bong, fill it like so. Now, I use treated water. I have a whole water system with my sink, so I'm not using the water filter they give, but I love the attention to detail when it comes to the water filter. So they have a water filter that will remove hardness, can remove detrimental things to your water, and they kind of force you in the setup to do a water test kit, and they ask you to choose what it is that corresponds to it on the screen to your water test kit. And so it takes that into account, and this is the water tank itself. So I'm really impressed with how they are so anal about making sure your water is good, and they will kind of send reminders if anything is, like you can set a reminder on your water filter to know when you should change it out. So we have the water filter there, but we also have a front fill. So if you have this under cabinets and you don't want to pull this machine out, bada bing, bada boom, you have a nice front fill that's spring loaded. Bang. Which I really like. Now, something that is an underrated feature, in my opinion, is this lever down here. So as you see, this is solid, 18 kilograms. It's not moving anywhere. Now, of course, I'm putting on a little show. I could move it if I wanted to, because your boy's yoked. But what is awesome is they have this little lever right here. When you do that, it lifts up, and now look at this. I think that is such an underrated feature. There are wheels down there. I don't know, roughly there-ish. Okay. Then we just have to push the lever back into its initial place. Bada bing, bada boom. Drip tray, huge, absolutely humongous. I'm personally a fan of big old drip trays. You lift this up, stainless steel top, the rest of it's plastic. At this price point, you would wish there wouldn't be so much plastic, but I don't know. This is one of those machines that it's hard to know exactly what all goes into it for the cost to be where it is. But, you know, we saw a plastic drip tray on the Monument, which is 20,000 euros. So, you know, I guess I don't know much at all. But anyway, massive drip tray reservoir here, which is nice. I do love whenever there are things like this inside of it to help with less spills, but it also is not as gross. When you see through this tray and you can see the bottom and you have like milk residue or something there, it looks gross. So this actually is a great kind of eye blocker for that. What also I love is under here, you have the place you can keep all your tools. So what'll happen is you push it in, when you pull it out, boom, it's right there. Love that. That way you can have everything kind of situated in the machine itself, and you don't have to have drawers dedicated to all of your cleaning supplies. Just keep it right down there underneath the machine. Now, I don't have the portafilter out. The original milk jug, I was using a different Breville milk jug, but it's the same material, because I kept it all in the box, because this is going to someone in my Patreon through a competition. So I like to keep things boxed up as much as possible. So now with the grinder, of course, you can lock it, pull the grinder off with ground still in it, and we still have some coffee beans inside the hopper itself, but you can always, you know, pick those out or use a vacuum to clean it out if you're wanting to clean it. Put it back in, we just lock it back in place, and now we're good to go. Push that lid right on. Now, this lid is nice because it has rubber around the edges, which means it's going to cause a nice seal between the plastic hopper and the top, which will help to trap some of those volatile organic compounds so it's not just oxidizing constantly, which is better than just a plastic top that fits on loosely. I still would recommend, you know, going through your beans quickly, not letting them sit in here for like weeks on end, but that's up to you. All right, so I've switched out the beans, but there is one thing to note about the grinder itself is there can be retention on these fins, which you may want to clean out every now and then because this will do some exchange, which isn't ideal. So whenever you're switching the coffee beans, I would take a brush, get some of that out, because if you're going from like a dark roast, maybe your spouse likes, and you're doing a light roast, it would be nice to not have that dark roast impede on the light. And also, I would also just recommend that you get in here and you do the purge properly whenever you're switching beans. Okay, there we go. And so that's what the purge looks like. The leveler is spinning the whole time, so it's shooting grounds out in a circular fashion, which isn't like necessarily ideal, but since it's kind of nutating, it helps to rearrange the bed a bit. But anyway, we got that going. Now we're gonna let it dial in on its own. Boom. There we go. So as you can see, this was the first time with this coffee, and look, the tamp wasn't perfectly flat because it kind of overestimated the amount of grounds to put in, so it wasn't able to give it a full flattening. So what we can do is we can use our razor, which I don't necessarily recommend doing. You can just pull your shot. It's not going to be the worst thing in the world, and it'll automatically, for the next one, it automatically detected that it was too much coffee, and it will compensate. So the next one won't be like this. But if you want, you can always just take a razor, if you have one, you can toss it out, or you could take just a tamp and you could just polish what that top was doing anyway. You just take a tamp and polish it, and it's fine. I wouldn't be super worried about it, but anyway, that's what we got going on. Let's take that there and pull the shot. All right, so 19 seconds. It's automatically going to go down in grind size. There we go. It goes to 16. All right, so just to show you, it will continue to make these adjustments, but because it's not purging between each one, you need to do that manually, which is going to waste even more coffee. So even though the auto dial-in's awesome, if you're using a lighter roasted coffee, I would dial it in myself and learn how the big jumps make differences, because this is kind of guessing and assuming it's a darker roasted coffee. I'm assuming what they've done in their algorithms to know how much to take off based off of the time was using a darker roasted coffee. With lighter roasted coffees, it's a different amount of change the Burr Gap needs to experience in order to experience the right change to hit what you're trying to get at. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to go even finer. I'm going to go to like 12, because what we're going to do is we're going to go to manual mode, and I'm going to show you one final thing that this can do for you coffee nerds out there that are interested in a bit more control over your brew. And what we're going to do here is we're going to first grind, obviously, but then I'm going to show you how you can manually pre-infuse and bloom. Pre-infusing ad infinitum, just randomly pre-infusing, doesn't really do anything. All you need in pre-infusion, quote-unquote pre-infusion, is to saturate the bed. Then it's great to have the capability of actually blooming it. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to start the shot, and then once, oh, see, this, because we went finer with a lighter coffee, ooh, it also did too much, and so it got the top of it. But there are fines that got in the cup. We're going to let that grind one more time. It's not done a full grind at that grind size, so it needs one more chance. That's the thing, when you start changing things, change the coffee, change the grind size, it's going to change the volume as well, so it takes 1 or 2 times. Was that done already? No. Grinder overheated. Hey, look what we've done. So no one's going to use this grinder as much as I have in this video. At least I would hope not at home. I've done probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 sessions during this video, which is like commercial use almost. So we gotta let that grinder cool down for a bit. Sad to say, but we'll let that grinder cool down and then come back to it. It is good, it stops you. Do not use this for commercial events. This is for home use. You don't want to sit there and grind and grind and grind and grind like I've done in this video, because this happens. Okay. It takes like 20 minutes to cool back down. So anyway, we just got our coffee ground back up. We're gonna go to manual mode and we're gonna do a blooming style of shot. So we have the grounds pretty fine, because to bloom, you want it a bit finer. What I'm gonna do is lock this in, get our cup ready, and then I'm going to hit manual. Now it's gonna start with pre-infusion, and essentially I'm gonna watch, there it goes. Now I'm gonna hold down and it's gonna bloom. So you hold down that button and it turns off the pump, but it doesn't open the solenoid, so it just kind of goes down. Now I'm a bit skeptical of the pressure gauge being perfectly accurate, because it should be dipping more pressure than what it's showing. It's not really dipping pressure at all, it went back up. So I'm a little skeptical how accurate that is when it comes to this blooming phase. I don't really have any questions when it's at 9 bar if that's right or not, because it's hitting 9 bar. And there are times it'll show 7 if I've taken away enough puck integrity. But this is what we got going. So that's a blooming shot, but it's ugly because I didn't dial in for it. I just wanted to kind of showcase it. Then we can stop that wherever we want, because we have manual power over it. And then you can click Save Custom. It'll save the last shot you did, and so we can just click this and it'll do the same thing again. So we have a spent puck in there, but it'll do pre-infusion, which there's no headspace. That's why the pressure went all the way up so fast. Blooming, just like we did a second ago. Now we've already created essentially a cement block in there by running this puck once before with how fine it was. But anyway, it's doing the same shot over again, and it's going to start back up here in a second, just like we did. And it'll do the same volume, or attempt to do the same volume in the same time. So there we go, and it's brewing now. So we can stop it, but you can see that it's a cup with an M. If we hold this down, we can go back to manual, or we can hit our custom one. So you can only save one custom at a time, but if you want to do a certain blooming style shot or whatever it is, you can click Save Last, and you can just keep running that custom manual profile over and over again, or you can create a new custom manual profile and run that over and over again. Let's get out of our minds that certain 9-bar pump machines do better than other 9-bar pump machines. It all depends on the water you're using, the grinder you're using, the basket you're using, and the coffee you're using. If you're pulling dark roast coffee, you are not going to tell a difference between a shot from this and a La Marzocco Linea. They're both 58 millimeters. You do the same dose, same basket, same water, same temperature. It's going to be effectively the same shot. It pulls like a normal 9-bar machine does. There's nothing special about it. Yes, the group is saturated with heat with that one extra little heating element above the group head, but a lot of other machines have similar capabilities with temperature stability. And as I've said many times on this channel, I think temperature stability is grossly overrated. We need a little bit, we don't need a ton. So when people are wasting a ton of R&D budget on temp stability, I think it's a wasted effort, wasted money, and extra money for you to pay for their R&D on something that's not that important. It has a fantastic milk steaming situation. It's got a fantastic little auto dial, though there are some quirks with it. It does a good job on the depth. The tamping is a bit sus and the distribution's a bit sus, but I mean, overall, it's going to do the job, especially if you're on the more developed side of things. And when I say more developed, to those of you who fancy yourselves light roast drinkers, what you might think is well developed is going to differ from what someone else thinks is well developed. When I say well developed, I mean like a medium light coffee or darker. All right, when I'm talking the lightest, when I talk really light, I'm talking lighter than like Nordic Light, which is quite light as is. So the ones it struggles with are the Nordic Light coffees due to the fact that this isn't really dialed in to handle those. So you may have a little bit more difficulty on the auto dial system. That being said, if you're someone that's drinking coffee that lightly roasted, you're likely something of a connoisseur. No, but the likelihood is, statistically speaking, you're likely someone that's nerdy enough that you're going to use the manual menu anyway, and you may even have a separate grinder, and this is likely not for you, but for a spouse or a partner, and you're just using it for the brewing mechanism. Heats up relatively quickly, though it is dual boiler, so it's not as good as the Thermojet. I'm not quite sure why there seems to be a market for this over the dual Thermojet system that was in the previous Oracle Jet, only because do you really need to steam and pull your shot at the same time, or is that 20 extra seconds too much for you to handle? I don't know. I prefer the on-demand, bada bing, bada boom, whatever, of the dual jet, as opposed to the dual boiler. But, we all have our own things. And the boiler in this is quite tiny inside the brew boiler itself, so that's a good thing. You're not heating up excessive amounts of water. It's pretty quick heat up because it's a tiny little boiler similar to a Gaggia or something like that. It is for those of you who like your coffee, you want cafe quality, which this can absolutely give you without having to mess with too much stuff. The automated system is more than good enough to beat most any cafe in your area. And no shade to cafes, there just aren't that many great ones. I know a lot of good cafes and they're there, but a lot of them, especially like run-of-the-mill typical traditional cafes, you'll be able to slay those bad boys with this. And even with good cafes, you'll be able to dial into your taste better with this than what they're going to be able to give you there, with just a little bit of the tutorials that they have on here. Now, of course, the big question, build quality. I actually think these are built quite well. They just haven't done a great job of making them self-repairable. There are loads of Facebook groups with people who have full diagrams and diagnostics of these machines. Well, maybe not this model yet, but when it comes to the dual boiler and the different oracles, they have these crazy guides on how to maintain your machine so it lasts forever and ever. I was going through some threads and I see people who have been using their Barista Express since 2011, people who've used their Oracle since the very first one that came out and have been using it without a hitch. It's just a matter of knowing how to use it, cleaning it properly, and using good water. Pay attention. They don't put a water filter and water test strips in here for you to then ignore it after setup. Pay attention to your water. If you want espresso at home and you don't want to cycle through cheapo machines every 2 years, you don't want this to conk out on you, pay attention to what it needs in order to maintain it. This is like a sophisticated, it's a sophisticated appliance. This is not just some beat around the bush Mr. Coffee that you're okay cycling one out every other year for $20. There are plastic parts to it that are not ideal. I do like the fan in here. Obviously, it's to help the grinder, but it's, we took a toll on it, and it's right here on the back of the machine is very hot right now. That being said, this is not a typical use case. Ain't nobody pulling 30 shots. And if you are, get a different machine. Spend an extra grand and get a Linea Mini if you're pulling 30 in an hour, 30 in 30 minutes like I just did. This is not, again, for everyone. So, and like I said, I didn't go through all the drinks on the menu, but I think they speak for themselves. They just give you kind of what you should do, and they help you figure out your grind size depending on the drink there. You can create your custom drinks. You can do your custom manual custom profile. Screen's nice. There are some issues on the manual mode, like when I change temperature, it gets kind of annoying. Like this. I can't change it quickly. I've changed 2 degrees in this time. You have to be really methodical. We're changing from 96 to 86. This is how long it takes. You have to be really methodical with it. As far as scrolling goes, there's pretty much no lag. It's a really nice touchscreen. Even with the negatives, I think it's really cool that something like this is available for those who, again, have the expendable income, but want to bring cafe quality in their home without having to learn a million things and watch all of my 40-minute rants. The improvements they've made for this generation, I think, are really cool. And I'm just really impressed with the auto station here. I think it does a solid job. But that is enough for me today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the time cues. And if you want a chance at winning this bad boy, check out my Patreon, because that's where it's going to go, is to some lucky winner. And That's how we do it here. But anyway, regardless of your machine, regardless of it's $3,000 or the $20 Mr. Coffee, the most important thing that you should take away from these videos is what we do here is trying to learn what innovations are out there, what new tech is out there, and implement it, and not necessarily implement it for us, but have other more accessible companies maybe implement it into something that more people can afford eventually. But for right now, it's neat that Sage Breville is able to do these things. They're really the only company on the market doing it. But anyway, all that aside, like I said, the most important thing is that whatever you're using, I hope that you brew something tasty today. And cheers.